A power forward that stands at 7'4" with no shoes on, has a wingspan of 8 feet long, shoots fading out of bound three-pointers. Let me introduce you to my next NBA 2K build. Huh? You tell me there's someone built exactly like that overseas? The craziest thing you've ever seen? He gave Rudy Gobert buckets at 16 years old? Welcome back, hoop heads. It's your boy Dash, and we're back at it with another banger. Switching things up a little bit, we're looking at a question. Is Victor Wembanyama the next modern GOAT or the next bust? Before we do answer that question, though, make sure to absolutely obliterate the like button, yam on that subscribe button, and make sure to turn on those post notifications. Now, you all probably have now heard about the overseas mythical creature that is Victor Wembanyama. Born in Le Chesnay, France, January 4th, 2004, by the way, the 18-year-old has earned himself an unfathomable amount of hype just from the few glimpses we've seen from the man. The word unicorn gets thrown around way too much nowadays, especially when describing any dude that's, 6'11" or above that can shoot the three ball, but the Frenchman is truly what we mean by a unicorn. This freak of nature named Victor has the capability to truly run an offense with his surprisingly silky ability to handle the ball, punish small defenders, aka everybody, his insane, bonkers ability to hit threes from wherever, however, and then my personal favorite part of his game, his knowledge on how to use his length and athleticism to shut down an entire team's defense. Conceived by his 6'6" father, Felix Wembanyama, and his 6'3" mother, Elodie de Fataru, the third-generation basketball player, has a name to live up to, as his 6'7" grandfather ran the French leagues back in the 60s, while simultaneously helping make Victor's mom a basketball phenom herself. While Victor's mom's side gave him the insight he would need to excel in hoops, his father, Felix, gave him the point of view from a high jumper star on how to take care of his body and get the most out of those fast twitch fiber muscles. Vic was simply destined to be great, having an older sister who was dominant in her own right, Yves Wembanyama, still representing the French national team hoops, which gave Victor something many of the greats had, an older sibling to punk his ass and give him that edge. Now let's get the scary part out of the way. Can Wemby stay healthy? It's the question we're all thinking, considering we got guys we've been waiting to see stay consistently healthy in the league today, such as the fable that is, for example, Zion Williamson. But we've always seen this issue with tall/big prospects since the early days of the league, whether it be Greg Oden in the late 2000s, Yao Ming in the early 2000s, Ralph Sampson in the 80s, or Bill Walton in the 70s. It is a part of the lottery that is the NBA draft. So let us go ahead and look at Victor's past injuries to see if we can get a little gauge to see how he'll end up in the league. First, we got the December 2020 injury that might actually be the most frightening, which was the stress fracture to his fibula. Being out from said injury for a full 3 months, but jumping right back into play was an amazing sign for himself, scouts, and all of us basketball fans. Determined to be back on the court, Vic shows he is not one of those guys that are, taking their sweet ass time getting back into that starting lineup. You know who I'm talking about, which is obviously somebody you'd rather have on your squad. Moving on to his two lesser injuries suffered back-to-back in the winter of 2021, as he suffered a fractured finger in November of the year, keeping him out for a month, and right as he returned, he suffered a shoulder bone contusion that kept him out for about 2 months. Now, the most recent and slightly concerning tweak that Victor suffered was in the summer of 2022, where my guy Vic had an undisclosed injury with the French press addressing it as a psoas injury, I think that's what it's called, which is the muscle that runs from your back to your leg, allowing one to pull their knee to their chest. This injury kept him entirely out of the Eurobasket tournament, where he would have had the opportunity to show the world and work alongside Rudy Gobert, maybe, teach him how to put the damn ball in the basket. Although there are speculations that this was simply extreme precaution on Victor's camp to make sure his future as the first overall pick was still guaranteed, I hope that's the case and the injury does not affect him long term. Now, NBA executives are absolutely raving about Wembanyama for obvious things like his mesmerizing height, wingspan, shot, handles, all of that. But what makes them use words like league-altering talent or Hall of Fame luck before he even touches an NBA court is the outstanding work ethic this man has. Victor took it upon himself to harass Dirk Nowitzki's former shooting coach, Holger Geschwinder, to work with him all throughout the summer to be able to add a softer touch to his mid-range shot, soaking up everything like a damn sponge. League executives are also drooling over the fact that Victor is a low-maintenance enigma, exhibiting levels of maturity you see out of an ideal championship leader, referencing how he positively communicates consistently on the court, off the court, in timeouts, when he's on the bench, when he's dog-tired. It doesn't matter. He talks. He's not the egotistical superstar who's pissed off when his teammates make a mistake. It's like he's empathetic enough to know, nobody's as good as he is at the game of basketball, and he's okay with it. He'll just handle business himself. I like it. One of my personal favorite things about Wemby, though, is his seriousness and focus he gives his body in terms of injury prevention. According to Draft Express, Victor's people have actually hired multiple sports medicine employees to watch, track, and adjust the way that Victor lands on his shots, dunks, and block attempts. Make sure he's able to sustain his health for decades to come. And you know this, if you're a long-term NBA fan, we've been denied viewing top-notch talent because some of those athletic freaks having no clue how to land. R.I.P. Derrick Rose. It was also reported that Victor takes about 45 minutes before practices and games, purely stretching out and activating muscle groups, never touching a basketball in those 45 minutes. And lastly, he has yet to lift any type of heavy weights in his 18 years of life, proclaiming that he's a believer in letting his body fill out naturally and to its fullest potential, taking advantage of the benefits that calisthenics provide. One of the first peeps we've ever heard about Victor was some 16-year-old French kid giving 3-time Defensive Player of the Year Rudy Gobert buckets. Posted October 27th, 2020, many were taken aback by the young dude being able to go right around, or even crazier, right over the top of Rudy Gobert. Shockwaves boomed over the internet, giving many their first taste of this overseas legend. While Gobert is not necessarily known for his ability to put the ball in the basket, especially from the top of the key, 16-year-old Victor Wembanyama was getting his hands on that thing, erasing a few weak-ass takes to the basket Rudy put up. This is without mentioning how silky smooth the young Frenchman's shot was from behind the arc. This video would foreshadow a dominance on both ends of the floor that we would see almost a whole half year later. Victor's U19 French national team faced up against the highly touted 7-1 Chet Holmgren and the U19 USA team. Now, first things first, zero disrespect to the U19 French national team, but we saw our guy absolutely put a lid on the rim, protecting that thing like his life depended on it, but getting, not a ton of help from his guys. We as non-French basketball fans were once again astonished as Wemby exhibited the strangely natural handle he has, sizing up defenders that are nervous of the potential drive, as he's able to get to the rim in one step because of his length, but instead simply pulling up in your eyeball like his name was the Slim Reaper. He shows scouts that he's also not going to be that cat archetype and consistently settle for threes, instead bullying smaller defenders by getting positioned near the rim before even receiving the ball. With Victor keeping the French ahead all game, it finally became too much as Vic fouled out with a few minutes left. His 22, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists wasn't enough of a cushion for his teammates to pull out with the win, but shockwaves were once again sent throughout the masses. With the hype dying back down, Victor went back to his homeland to continue to elevate his game. He went back to playing for his squad, LDLC Asvel, for the 21-22 season in the EuroLeague and the LMB Pro A League, France's highest level, and his numbers aren't necessarily, jaw-dropping, averaging 6.5 points, 3.8 assists, and 1.9 blocks a game in the EuroLeague, and then 9.4 points, 5 boards, and about a steal and a block and a half per game in the French league. Now, this is a 17-year-old who did not have the keys to his team compared to somebody like Luka Doncic, but they still have very comparable stats in that sense. This time was important for Victor as he was focused on getting his legs back under him since he was returning from injury, but also to hone in his craft to continue to be, comfortable playing against grown men. That height and strength, you can't really find somebody his age. Quietly continue to flourish and add on to his game. This was all part of the setup for one of the funnest and most exciting non-NBA games of all time. The date is October 4th, 2022, Henderson, Nevada. Both the projected number 1 picks in Victor Wembanyama and the number 2 picks in Sterling Scoot Henderson geared up for one of the most hyped up exhibition games of all time. With it being Scoot's second year with the G League Ignite, many scouts and fans were familiar with his grip that he had on any given basketball game. The 18-year-old knew how to get the game to his pace that he wanted. Scoot was already known to attack the rim like a controlled madman, while also punishing defenses who were silly enough to trot back on him by hitting silky, deep middies. But many fans and scouts had only heard of or seen short clips about the mythical game of Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, nobody ever heard of the Metropolis 92 team, so all the eyes were on him this game. The future of the NBA then tipped off. Right out the gate, we quickly saw how Scoot Henderson was not here to watch Wembanyama get his, as he starts off with an aggressive pull-up jumper to set the tone, show everybody that he is fearless. And actually, if you were to only watch the first half of this game, you might have been able to convince yourself that Scoot looked like the better player out there, having 18 points in the first half in comparison to Victor's 9 first half points. But this is about the number one pick. Vic was just heating up. No disrespect to Scoot, who I also think is a league-altering talent in himself, but I think Vic just chose to show off his defensive mastery in that first half. Wembanyama pulled out all the kind of stops you want. Want him to put a lid on the rim by stopping drives? He got you. Clamp big guy in the post? Done. Block a three-pointer starting from the block? I know just the man. Where we really start to see things take off with our favorite Frenchman is the second half, where he stuns the crowd, hitting 3 after 3 after 3. G League Ignite is having the utmost difficulty contesting these threes, as Wemby converted a 4-point play while also getting 3 free shots a little bit later on in the game. I simply cannot emphasize how fucking ridiculous this is. His 3-point making ability is something insane, and I'm tired of acting like it isn't the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. This is without mentioning a vicious lob he caught, the multiple post face-ups he had, simply one dribble pulling up in a 7-foot guy's face, or abusing a mismatch in the post. Mismatch as in anyone 6'11" and shorter. Even with the continuation of his block party, Metropolis 92 came out as the losers of this pregame exhibition, crowning Scoot Henderson and the Ignite as the winners. Even though Vic couldn't get the win on paper, he sure felt like a winner, with the entire basketball world picking up their jaws after seeing one of the wildest performances from a 7'4" player they've ever seen. These two were the thing to talk about the next day, and for weeks after that, from ESPN, Fox Sports, to you telling Todd at the office, "Hey man, you see that Wemben whatever his name is last night?" Just like that, we finally got the hype train really going. 11 days later, Vic was back cooking in the LMB Pro A French League, continuing to demolish his competition, as they are 6-1 on the season currently. With the NBA streaming Victor's games on the NBA app, the world gets a chance to see some of his casual one-legged threes and, volleyball spikes about once a week. Currently averaging about 21 points per game, 8.9 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 2.9 blocks per game, on 51% shooting from the field and 33 behind the arc, on approximately 5 attempts from 3 per game. The 18-year-old is feasting in a grown man's league, with a whole stretch of 27 more games to go in the young man's last season before the NBA. We got a lot left to dissect in his game. But from what we've seen so far, what can we expect? Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I do think it's pretty unfair for us as spectators to, put lofty expectations onto an 18-year-old. And I do stand by that. But sometimes in the world, there are things called exceptions. And Victor Wembanyama is exactly that, an exception. Looking throughout all the league's history, one of the only slightly comparable guys I could find is a college version of Ralph Sampson. This 7'4" legend was revolutionary for his time, as he spent time at the University of Virginia in the early 80s, not exclusively playing on the block like so many big men were expected to at that time. With his lanky frame and surprising handles, he was able to create his own space, shoot over smaller defenders, making a living out of it. Sound familiar? While Sampson deserves credit where credit is due, Victor will be a much more successful NBA player, considering he doesn't suffer the same type of injuries that Sampson did. Unfortunately for Ralph as well, he didn't have the fading corner three in his bag like Vic. As we discussed earlier, we know Victor takes his health seriously. He's adapted to the max as to what we expect from a dominant big nowadays. He's got the maturity of a seasoned vet. I have Victor Wembanyama projected to be a multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year, League MVP, and a championship or two, but who knows? Maybe Giannis puts his shoulder into him one time, strikes fear into his heart, waking him up to the reality of the physicality in the league. Or hey, maybe he becomes one to rival Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as one of the greatest to ever pick up a basketball. And thank you so much for watching, Hoop Heads. I hope I could shine some light on the absolute monster that is Victor Wembanyama. Where do you think his ceiling is? Do you think he's just going to be another Porzingis out there in the league, or do you see him potentially making it in the GOAT conversation? Let me know down in the comments section below, and as always, y'all have a phenomenal day.